Hello. Alright, so this book is in pretty bad shape. Hopefully I can finish this. I'm not even a third done with this book so far. So I gotta get faster. I guess I'm just gonna read faster and try to get more done in each video. That way at least I can get 2 pages within every 10-15 minute video. And that way I can get from 25 to 132 pages or 130 pages. Alright, so I still have 4 times as much to read. So maybe I'm done with 1/5 so far. Alright, so now we're talking about the economic structures or forms. And now we're entering the 9th form, so he's going to talk about what a form really is. At the center of each form is a dominant city where the essential financial, technical, cultural, and ideological, but not necessarily political, power is concentrated. So all these forms of powers, except for the political, because the political is usually a show for the public, whereas these are the real things that manage the public, really. Financial, technical, technology, cultural, ideological, religious. So the order of the sacred, the order of money, and the order of force, overall synthesizing into the culture. And elite typically controls the market, the prices, and the products. The elite accumulates the profits, controls the salaries and the workers, finances artists and explorers. The elite defines the ideology that supports its power. Religious revolutions are often determinant factors. The currency, and that's true if you know European history, the currency of the center dominates international exchanges. And that's the form, the dominant city of the form. Its currency dominates international exchanges. Artists come from everywhere to build palaces and tombs, to paint portraits and landscapes in the dominant city. And we can see how Hollywood has done a great job of that in the recent past, although it's falling now. I wonder what's going to be next. Well, YouTube is next, I guess. Around this center is a milieu or hinterland. So that's the center dominant city, is the center. And around it is a milieu or hinterland, comprising many countries or developed regions that buy the products of the center. So these are the developed regions, the first world, or the second world, that buy the products of the center. So first world and second world is just 2 parallels, 2 convergent and divergent or contrasting empires in the past around the Cold War. But anyway, around the center is a hinterland that buy the products of the center. These are countries or developed regions. Here you find ancient or future centers, the regions in decline or on the rise. So there's always this global struggle going on to become the center. And around the center there are the previous or future centers, called milieu or hinterland. So milieu is like the general region that center is in. It's also called the hinterland. Alright? And then we have the third world of the past, which is called the periphery. Further away is the periphery, still partially ruled by the order of force. So that's why third world, there's more police brutality and so forth, because the order of force is still dominant there, whereas it has moved past that in this region of the milieu or hinterland and the center. So the periphery contains the exploited regions that sell their primary resources and their labor to the center and to the hinterland without ever having access to the wealth of the center. So exploited regions selling their primary resources and their labor to the center and the hinterland, but they never have the access to the wealth of the center. So they're the exploited groups, the exploited regions that create the wealth for the center and the hinterland to enjoy. All right, 5 minutes. Great timing. Each market form uses technologies that are more efficient than its predecessors in utilizing energy and organizing communications. Okay. I'm going to take a water break. Where are we at? Each market form uses technologies that are more efficient than its predecessors in utilizing energy and organizing communications. A form is stable so long as it creates enough wealth. So we see how that's true, right? The steam engine, and then we had the microwave and so forth. And we also have going from the telephone to the cell phone and the iWatch. And one day they're going to have something in your eye to watch everything in. So anyway, a form is stable so long as it creates enough wealth to maintain the demand for its products. So they need to create enough wealth to maintain the demand for its products. When its ability, that's why China is the big dog now, because it has managed to make cheap enough products for us to keep consuming. When its ability to do this is hampered or falters, the market form weakens. Alright, when its ability to do this is hampered, the market form weakens. That's why the West is falling. It becomes vulnerable to the challenge of an alternative form that begins to emerge, upsetting the established hierarchy of nations and of the dominant technology. So when its ability to create enough wealth to maintain demand for its products is hampered, it weakens and becomes vulnerable to the challenges of an alternate form that begins to emerge, upsetting the established hierarchy of nations and the dominant technology. That's what he's talking about here, because he's saying we're entering into a new market form, the ninth. A market form thus has a relatively short life of stability, sandwiched as it is between two long-lasting periods of disorder. So market form is actually a rare thing. Most of it is disorder, wars, rumors of wars, and economic crisis, as we have seen in this millennium very clearly. Disorder, it may be said, is a natural state of the world. The stability provided by an organized market form is the exception, not the rule. At any moment, market society is either in the process of separating itself from an older form or approaching a new form. The long period of uncertainty and apparent regression between two forms is called a crisis. The economic crisis, I guess, was the birth of the new form, which is why they had movies like 2010 and 2012 and so forth. And Obama, change we can believe in. And yes, we can. Anyway, yes, we can. The stupider and stupider and unaware of the real forces, right? It begins, so anyway, the long period of uncertainty is called a crisis. It begins when it becomes necessary to spend too much value to create and sustain demand. So it begins when it becomes necessary to spend too much value to create and sustain demand. That's why they were complaining about the decreasing American consumer confidence. That is to maintain consumers in a solvent state, and when too much is spent on military expenses to protect the market form, wars for oil. So that's when the crisis begins, right? When there is too much necessary to spend too much value to create and sustain demand, and too much is spent on military expenses to protect the form. Because most wars are economic. Actually, most wars are cultural, but when there's a real military war, most revolutions are cultural, but wars are done to change culture, to change society, and also they're very economic in their reasons. The crisis lasts until somewhere new technology, new ways of thinking, and new social relations, basically what I'm talking about with the war and revolution, generate demand more efficiently and can reduce the proportion of costs to total added value. So it's all about the profit is profit. The profit of business is profit. The profit. PROPHET is profit. PROFIT. So yeah, new stuff reduces the proportion of cost to total added value. This is the new technology. It ends, so the crisis lasts until, and then it ends when a new form organizes, when a new center is founded with the new form, and when technologies and social relations allow competing businesses on the market to replace a non-market service by a new mass-produced object on the market, thereby creating added value. So in the West, we are told that we are a service economy. So that tells us that we are in the crisis phase of destruction until China becomes the dominant political and social and economic force in the world. So that's what it seems like to me, because a new form has to organize before the crisis, when the crisis is over, and a new center has to be founded with the new technologies and social relations allowing competing businesses on the market to replace these non-market services by new mass-produced objects on the market, thereby creating added value. Alright, we're almost done. Thus, each crisis contains the interplay of rival countries dreaming of dominating the world, or more simply, of improving their place in the hierarchy of nations. That's what the whole BS with Russia and Iran and North Korea is all about. It's just the new market emerging in the oceanic areas of the East Asia, which is going to be the more dominant force, according to himself, this author himself. The essential elements of international relations may be explained by the strategies employed by countries to stay in the hinterland or to become the center, or else to escape from the periphery, or finally, for entering the periphery when they are still outside the market order. So that's countries in the Middle East, obviously. And then we see how India and China. Well, China has already escaped the periphery, but India is also escaping the periphery. It seems like some third world countries are becoming bigger dogs and joining the hinterland, or even becoming the center. So anyway, and some want to enter the periphery. Today we are at the end of one crisis, and not the people but the governments is what he's talking about, and the elite of each country is basically fighting with other countries for in the big club that you're not a part of, just like George Carlin said. Anyway, today we are at the end of one crisis and at the dawn of just such a mutation, and this is 1990. Keep that in mind. To understand what this transition will entail, let's examine some of the characteristics of previous market forms. And then he goes back into the history from the 13th century to the 20th century. 8 successive forms have emerged, characterized by these 8 centers, such as Bruges, Venice, Antwerp, Genoa, Amsterdam, London, obviously. I know this history pretty well. But then became Boston and New York in the 1930s. So 8 major technological inventions, the principal one being the printing press, accounting methods, stern steering mechanisms, the flyboat, caravel, steam engine, the internal combustion motor, and the electric motor. So these are the 8 forms, and then the 9th one he already talked about was the microchip-based technologies. As technology is invented, production improves, and society is able to cut the costs of goods and services. New mass-produced goods replace labor-intensive services previously performed outside the market, and new wealth is generated. For example, the ox cart or horse-drawn wagon is replaced by the car, the washtub by the washing machine, telling stories around the fireplace by the theater by television. The relentless logic of the ever-expanding market demands that high-cost, labor-intensive services and goods be replaced by services and goods that will accomplish more with less. With each successive market form, the original unit of production and consumption, the family, is progressively reduced to its biological nucleus as its primordial functions, whether the feeding, clothing, sheltering, educating, or amusing of its young, are transferred to the market. Today, the family is in danger of extinction as the services its members once produced, provided each other for nothing, are replaced by mass-produced objects that must be bought. And that's what he was talking about earlier, the intertwining of the order of money in all our social relations. Braudel understood this process very well. A world economy always has an urban center of gravity, a city, as a logistic heart of its activity. News, merchandise, capital. Oh, Jesus. News, merchandise, capital, credit, people, instructions, correspondence all flow into and out of the city. His powerful merchants lay down the law, sometimes becoming extraordinarily wealthy. But Braudel knew that nothing was forever. The besetting sin of these pulsating capitalistic cities was their high cost of living, not to mention, so that's kind of Hollywood, huh? Not to mention the constant inflation resulting from the intrinsic nature of the higher urban functions. Thus, he concluded, dominant cities did not dominate forever. They replaced each other. Such shifts are always significant. They interrupt the calm flow of history, revealing the precariousness of the previous equilibrium and the strengths of that which was replacing it. There is only room for one center at a time in a world economy. This the success of one sooner or later means the eclipse of the other. Alright, because like Rockefeller said, competition is a sin. The essential question that must be answered is who decides which region or city will become a center? And then he talks about a city becomes a center when blah 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 blah. So we leave off at page 29 and till next time. Peace.